The Reformation project that goes on, like, you believe they've wheeled out this guy? Here is Eric Cantor. Eric Cantor was the former whip. Was he whip when he got lost, or he was the number 2? He was the first Republican to lose in a primary, member of the Republican leadership to lose in a primary to a Tea Party Republican, a guy named Bratt, if I remember correctly, David Bratt, who I think was like I think he was a professor at a college.
He kind of ran on smaller donations, right? Like it was it was kind of the flip of the AOC Crowley thing.
Did Bratt run on small donations?
Yes, I believe so.
He may have, but to understand the Tea Party and that stuff is to also understand that there was a lot of institutional money behind guys like that and those organizations in a way that there isn't, when you're making that analogy. And but Cantor was particularly vulnerable in the same way that Crowley was. He hadn't been back in the district. He was spending a lot of time in D.C. He was considered a little bit soft, in terms of his Republican. He was still horrible, but and also Jewish, which I think probably played into some of that during in Virginia. But but they're wheeling him back out, and he is complaining, of course, not about the movement that he saw up close. Like, let me just tell you this: when Pat Toomey ran the first time in Pennsylvania, people thought he was a lunatic. He was considered so fringe, and it was the Club for Growth, and they were just like so marginal. And now this guy he's like the center of the Republican Party. So the idea that this is a both-sidism, but here's Eric Cantor with Brianna Keilar on CNN making that argument.
Listen, I don't doubt for a second that the level of craziness has increased in Washington over the last few years in both parties. But certainly when we were serving back during the Obama administration, there was plenty of indicators that we had an extreme element on both sides of the aisle. One of the things that happened early on in the Obama administration was he laid down the gauntlet with his so-called stimulus bill and drew the party line really brightly, which encouraged some of this backlash on the extreme end of the spectrums on our side and his.
This is a coordinated thing.
Totally.
Totally. Coordinated effort in order to, Cantor basically lost to Marjorie Taylor Greene in Bratt before Marjorie Taylor Greene existed, right? I mean, that was the first iteration of it. And so now they're trotting him back out there in order to be the mascot or one of the many mascots for what the Republican Party used to be in the pre-Trump era. The party that set the table for Donald Trump, how respectable they used to be. Let's elect them all in 2022 and 2024.
But
meanwhile,
there's more than just branding that's going on here. Yeah. I think this is a concerted effort to defang the ability of the Biden administration, which, let's be clear here, the idea that there was extremists on both sides, right? Like, I don't know what the extremists that Cantor is talking about,
I do.
Who that would represent on the Democrat.
It's what Kevin McCarthy did yesterday in calling for the censoring of Maxine Waters. This is what they're doing. It is coordinated. Yesterday, Kevin McCarthy tried to get Maxine Waters censured for nothing.
Right. And but here's the from a political standpoint, like the extremism that he's talking about, there was nothing. They are trying to really, I think, prevent this infrastructure bill, and particularly the second tranche of this infrastructure bill, the $1 trillion, which has already been sort of pre-negotiated again, right? Because originally it was going to be like $2 or $3 trillion. But when you're talking about things like
the stimulus bill, so-called stimulus bill.
Yes. This is a direct attack on, I mean, I think like there's the extremism where you're talking about Waters, which is like sort of there, but this is in a way, because Eric Cantor's interests are limited to business interests, and to Pete Peterson style business interests. He is trying to, in many respects, sort of like make sure that this, that the Mansion, Cinema, Warner type of folks, don't go too far. And that's what this is about. This is putting
I think they're connected though, Sam. Kevin McCarthy's interests are the same interests too. And if Kevin McCarthy really wanted to flex his muscles, he would be doing what Nancy Pelosi does to the progressive movement with these nutcases. But it serves as a valid distraction, a valid momentum builder to two different bases to block whatever, is coming out. Because we are winning the narrative wars against them. We are tying Kevin McCarthy to the extremists. And as a result, they're not able to get momentum against the stimulus bill. So if they have, two wars at once, suddenly, they're bringing the narrative back.
Well, they can talk out of both sides of their mouth. They can enable Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's breaking records with donations, and then they can go to the Beltway media, which is the audience of the Biden administration and the exact people that Sam's talking about there, of Mark Warner, et cetera, and then get their, business agenda, legislative priorities through. It's happening in real time.
Did with McCarthy was talking about Waters, was that a function of the what did she do that was extremist?
Her comments on Chauvin. I wonder if we have a.
Yeah, I mean that I gotta say, I do think that she should not have said those things. I don't think you want a politician going out there while a jury is deliberating, because it literally could be grounds. I'm not talking on a political as a political matter. I'm talking about as a matter in that is the type of thing that could theoretically hurt the conviction.
His argument was essentially that she was inciting violence, just like Donald Trump was inciting violence in the Capitol.
Yeah, but I don't care what Kevin McCarthy says. But the judge was pissed, and I don't blame the judge, because if these people are not properly sequestered, if they hear about this, that is going to be a grounds for an appeal later. And I don't think it's an absolutely off the wall grounds for an appeal. I mean, the idea that like, I saw a politician who said that there could be riots if we don't convict Chauvin, and so I did. A jury saying that, a jurist saying that, then you could ruin the conviction.
Yeah.
And that's definitely going to be a grounds for appeal. I mean, it's going.
Here's the thing, though. Everybody's saying that, though. It's not just her. I mean, they locked down Los Angeles and major cities.
But who is saying that, though? But the point is that
press.
Well, the press might be, but when a politician does, they have a. We all agree, I think, in the concept that politicians have a higher responsibility because they're elected leaders, right? I don't think it's incumbent upon me to tell everybody the moment I get vaccinated, but we did think it was incumbent upon the president to do that because he has a higher profile, and that's going to have an impact on the public discourse. She
was responding. I mean, she's a congresswoman for Southern California. She was responding to what was happening in Southern California, where they were completely shutting down the streets and boarding up buildings. I mean, it's like she can't acknowledge reality. And if somebody asks her to respond to that, I don't know. I mean, the jury needs to be sequestered. So we can't live our lives in fear, including lawmakers who have to deal with a million other things that they have to respond to.
Personally, if I'm a lawmaker and there's an ongoing trial that is like a national trial, I would say I hope the jury does the right thing, and I'll wait to see what the jury verdict is. I mean, that's what I would do. I mean, I just think that because
Biden did that. I mean,
I think that's
praying though.
I think that's more or less the responsible thing to do. You're not having to lie or pretend anything about it, but you're just saying I'm going to defer to the legal process, and then I'll make my assessment, right, of what's going on. Because you should know that you're a national figure. You could implicate these things. That's just my feeling. But
I'm in between you both. Both sides are right.
There you go.
Okay. Hey, guys, I just defended Maxine Waters after we had a big fight at the platform committee meeting. So do I get a point back for that?
Did she beat you up too? I've heard.
No, that's why I don't mention it, because that after that